The roar of the crowd, the smell of freshly cut grass, and the sight of players in kits that felt like they were made for giants. This was football in the 2000s, an era some say we may never truly see again. We look back with a certain kind of wistful nostalgia at a time when the beautiful game truly embraced its wild side, when individual genius was not just tolerated but celebrated. How did this decade become etched into our collective memory as a golden age? And what exactly made it feel so different from the football we watch today? If you enjoy stepping back into these football stories with me, feel free to like the video and subscribe for more documentaries like this. The fashion on the pitch was distinct. Player kits were typically oversized, often baggy, allowing a freedom of movement that seemed to reflect the freedom in their style of play. There were no faded haircuts or trendy aesthetic rules dictating how a footballer should look. The focus remained firmly on what happened between the lines. The slide tackle, for instance, was considered an art form, a balletic move involving simultaneous contact with the grass, the opponent, and crucially, the ball, often met with cheers for its audacious commitment. Indeed, the 2000s are widely recognized as a golden era for football due to the sheer caliber of active players across all leagues. Almost every team, regardless of their standing, possessed at least one player capable of influencing the entire 90-minute game through sheer will and skill. This was a time when individual players would frequently undertake long, marauding runs, dribbling past multiple opponents, turning games on their head with a moment of singular brilliance. The visual appeal and dynamic style of football during this period were characterized by an expressive quality that thrilled audiences worldwide. The transfer market operated on a different scale entirely, showing a lack of the inflation we see today, with only truly elite players commanding significant fees. We remember Ronaldinho's transfer to Barcelona from Paris Saint-Germain, a monumental move at the time costing €32 million. In stark contrast, €32 million in modern football might acquire a promising but unproven talent, perhaps someone like Rice Nelson, highlighting the staggering shift in valuation. This economic reality contributed to a perceived purity, a sense that players were bought for their undisputed quality rather than their potential resale value. Players in the 2000s experienced fewer restrictions during games, allowing for immense individual expression driven by high levels of passion and commitment on the pitch. They often attempted shots from outside the penalty box, aiming to surprise the goalkeeper with audacious efforts, a thrilling aspect of the game. Compare this to contemporary domestic football, which often lacks the same level of expressive play, unlike international competitions where a certain freedom still thrives. The tactical approaches of modern football, heavily influenced by sports science, have led to a significant reduction in shots taken from outside the 18-yard box, as the low statistical probability of scoring from these positions discourages attempts. Contemporary football players are often discouraged from spontaneous shooting and self-expression due to rigid tactical approaches, a stark contrast to the intuitive play of the 2000s. Freedom in football play is predominantly observed in modern international competitions where managers operate with players for shorter periods annually, leading to less rigid tactical enforcement. Current domestic football, especially across the top 5 leagues, is frequently perceived as predictable, with teams favoring safe strategies that often involve moving the ball to the wings and delivering crosses into the penalty box, diminishing the element of surprise. The absence of prevalent social media platforms in the 2000s fostered stronger player attachment to their clubs and jobs, creating more genuine player-club relationships. Player performance was directly influenced by immediate fan reactions during games. A bad outing would mean facing the music directly. In this era, an apology for a poor performance, perhaps a 5-0 loss, was typically delivered through improved play in the subsequent match, emphasizing proving oneself on the field rather than through digital apologies like today's Instagram stories or Twitter updates. The shift towards data-driven tactics in modern football, marked by the widespread adoption of global positioning system tracking and performance analytics post-2000s, profoundly impacted player movement and decision-making on the pitch. This contrasts sharply with the intuitive and expressive play of the earlier decade. Furthermore, changes in refereeing interpretations of fouls and physical contact have also contributed to a different style of play, often perceived as less physical than the 2000s. The evolution of football boots and equipment between the 2000s and today also reflects a broader shift towards technical performance over traditional aesthetics, although new matchball technologies in the 2000s initially offered some players an advantage for long-range shots. The Bozeman ruling of 1995 significantly influenced player mobility and contract negotiations, indirectly contributing to the transfer market dynamics and the decline of the one-club man phenomenon, which began to accelerate in the 2000s. The early 2000s also saw a gradual increase in global broadcasting rights, making leagues more accessible internationally, while the media landscape was less saturated with constant player updates and analysis compared to the current era of 24/7 sports news. Technical skills, such as dribbling and long-range shooting, were often prioritized in player development alongside the prominence of the number 10 playmaker, who was given significant creative freedom, a role less common in many current tactical systems. The emphasis on individual brilliance and flair was a hallmark of the 2000s, contrasting with the collective, system-oriented play often seen today. Managers had less access to real-time performance data during matches, relying more on intuition and experience, allowing for more moments of individual skill and less constant pressing. The development of sophisticated training methodologies in the post-2000s era has led to more physically conditioned, but perhaps less spontaneous, players. Additionally, the increase in the number of competitive matches and international breaks has influenced the intensity and style of domestic league play, making the 2000s a period where player individuality was often celebrated above strict tactical adherence, leading to more unpredictable moments. The visual identity of clubs, including kits, was less standardized and more varied in design during the 2000s. The influence of continental European coaching philosophies, emphasizing possession and tactical discipline, began to spread more widely towards the end of the 2000s, marking a transition. The general pace of the game in the 2000s, while high, allowed for more moments of individual skill and less constant pressing than modern football, and the evolution of pitch maintenance and surface quality also impacted gameplay, allowing for faster and more consistent ball movement. The 2000s were a bridge between the highly individualistic play of previous decades and the more organized, data-driven approach that followed. The cultural significance of specific match rivalries often carried more weight in local communities due to less globalized fan bases, and the emotional connection of players to their home stadiums and local fans was a more defining characteristic of their careers. The prevalence of defensive formations such as 4-4-2 in the 2000s allowed for more direct attacking play and individual battles, with the development of specialist roles within teams being less pronounced. Many players expected to perform multiple functions. The concept of total football, though originating earlier, saw a resurgence in influence in certain teams during the 2000s, emphasizing fluid positions and tactical flexibility, with players who could operate in multiple positions being highly valued. The increasing commercialization of football, while present, had not reached the same level as the post-2010 era, allowing for a perceived purer form of the game. The 2000s saw the rise of modern sports academies, which started to standardize youth development methods, influencing future generations of players. The introduction of the Union of European Football Associations Champions League format in the early 1990s continued to elevate the prestige and financial stakes of European club football throughout the 2000s, yet the diversity of playing styles across different leagues was more pronounced, with distinct characteristics for Serie A, La Liga, and the Premier League, for example. The emphasis on direct attacking play and counter-attacks was a common tactical approach in many successful teams of the 2000s. The role of the target man striker, relying on physical presence and aerial ability, was still a significant feature of offensive strategies, contrasting with the less common use of false nines and highly fluid attacking systems. The lack of extensive video analysis for opponents meant teams relied more on scouting reports and in-game adjustments. The perception of football as entertainment was deeply ingrained, with a focus on dramatic matches and individual heroics. The 2000s were marked by several significant rule changes, such as the introduction of the golden goal and silver goal rules in international tournaments, though later abandoned. The growing influence of agents in player transfers and contract negotiations became more apparent during this decade, further changing player mobility. The concept of squad rotation became more sophisticated, with managers balancing domestic and European commitments, even though the relative stability of managerial tenures at top clubs was somewhat higher, allowing for longer-term team building and consistent philosophies. The impact of injuries was often managed with less sophisticated sports medicine techniques compared to contemporary practices, influencing player longevity. This period was also a transition in sports broadcasting, moving from traditional terrestrial television to satellite and early digital platforms, enhancing global reach, and the visual spectacle of the game, including vibrant kits and dynamic play, contributed significantly to its entertainment value. The iconic celebrations of players, often spontaneous and less choreographed, were a characteristic feature of goals scored in the 2000s, amplifying the emotional investment of fans. The aesthetic of certain stadiums, many of which were older and had more character, contributed to the overall matchday experience. The development of specific training programs for different player positions became more formalized during this period, yet the 2000s represented a time where individual skill and flair were often sufficient to overcome tactical deficiencies. The competitive balance within leagues, especially outside the top few teams, was often perceived as stronger. The cultural significance of local derbies and rivalries was often amplified by the strong local identities of clubs and fan bases. Increased efforts in anti-doping regulations also began to reflect a broader shift towards fair play and athlete welfare, while the role of the goalkeeper continued to evolve with an increasing emphasis on distribution skills in addition to shot stopping. The popularity of football video games, such as FIFA and Pro Evolution Soccer, contributed to the global recognition of players and teams from the 2000s, cementing their legend in popular culture. The emphasis on attacking football often meant that defensive solidity was sometimes compromised in favor of goal-scoring opportunities, leading to many iconic individual goals that combined skill, power, and audacity. This era was a testament to total football, which saw a resurgence, emphasizing fluid positions and a purer form of the game before commercialization reached its current peak. In the nascent years of the 2000s, defenders were not merely players, they were gladiators, characterized by a robust and often aggressive approach to challenges. These imposing figures frequently served as the undeniable leaders for their teams, exuding a commanding presence that resonated across the pitch. Indeed, the defensive style of play in that decade was less about a 90-minute contest and more akin to going to war, a visceral battle for every inch. Many observers at the time perceived individual defenders from this era to be more skilled in one-versus-one situations than their contemporary counterparts. In these earlier years, individual player skill was primarily responsible for defensive solidity, with towering figures holding the line through sheer ability and grit. Yet, over time, reliance on individual defensive efforts was deemed unsustainable against the relentless evolution of attacking strategies. This realization prompted managers to implement new team tactics, transforming defenses into more cohesive, impenetrable units. The objective of these sophisticated defensive tactics was twofold: to intimidate attackers and significantly reduce the number of goals conceded. Consequently, the strength of contemporary defenses has increased considerably, largely due to the development and precise implementation of comprehensive defensive systems, a stark contrast to the earlier individualistic approach. The 2000s marked a period where the very essence of football transcended being merely a sport. It was also considered a profound form of entertainment, a spectacle that captured imaginations worldwide. Unforeseen and dramatic events frequently occurred within football during the 2000s, often unfolding in remarkably short periods, leaving fans breathless. This unpredictability stands in contrast to modern football, which is sometimes characterized by increased predictability in outcomes and even in transfer news. Today, journalists like Fabrizio Romano are known for reporting major transfers months before they officially happen, reducing the element of surprise that once thrilled supporters. The quality of football displayed in the 2000s was considered exceptionally high and utterly undeniable. The 2006 World Cup, for instance, featured an astonishing 12 players who had either already won or would go on to win the prestigious Ballon d'Or award, showcasing an unparalleled concentration of talent. This incredible roster of Ballon d'Or-level players present at the 2006 World Cup included global icons such as Cristiano Ronaldo, Lionel Messi, the original Ronaldo known as R9, defensive maestro Fabio Cannavaro, the elegant CAC midfield orchestrator Luka Modric, the dazzling Ronaldinho, clinical striker Andriy Shevchenko, the incomparable Zinedine Zidane, legendary English forward Michael Owen, Portuguese icon Luis Figo, and the industrious Pavel Nedved DFD. Hundreds of players achieved significant dominance during the 2000s era, leaving an indelible mark on the game. This era is often described as a time where players of various styles could seamlessly integrate into the game without being constrained by rigid tactical frameworks or even tight-fitting kits, allowing for greater individual expression. If you enjoy stepping back into these football stories with me, feel free to like the video and subscribe for more documentaries like this. The development of zonal marking systems became more widespread in the 2000s, shifting the focus from individual man marking to collective spatial awareness. The role of the defensive midfielder also evolved significantly, moving beyond pure ball winning to include crucial playmaking responsibilities from deeper positions on the pitch. The tactical battle between coaches became increasingly sophisticated, leading to more structured team play over individual heroics, though the latter still held immense value. The concept of gegenpressing or high pressing, while not yet fully mainstream, began to subtly influence some tactical approaches towards the end of the decade, hinting at future trends. The introduction of specific fitness and conditioning regimes allow players to maintain high intensity for longer periods, directly impacting both defensive and offensive transitions. The psychological aspect of intimidating opponents through strong defensive displays was a recognized and often effective tactic in the 2000s, forming a key part of many teams' identities. The increased use of technology in broadcasting, such as slow-motion replays, highlighted both exceptional defensive plays and critical tactical errors, giving viewers new insights. The media narrative surrounding football in the 2000s often focused intensely on individual rivalries and dramatic storylines, adding to the spectacle. The rise of online fan forums and early social media platforms began to offer new avenues for public discussion and prediction of football events, broadening engagement beyond traditional media. The unpredictability of managerial sackings and appointments also contributed to the dramatic, often sensational, narrative of football in the 2000s, creating constant churn and excitement. The development of youth academies by top clubs in the 2000s aimed to cultivate versatile players who could adapt to evolving tactical demands, sowing the seeds for future talent. This decade witnessed a continuous debate between proponents of attacking football and those advocating for defensive solidity, a philosophical struggle that influenced tactical trends across leagues. The physical demands on defenders increased notably, requiring a potent combination of strength, pace, and aerial ability to cope with a wider range of attacking threats than ever before. The tactical use of offside traps became a more refined art, demanding precise coordination and communication among defenders to execute effectively. The shift from traditional back fours to occasionally employing three-man defenses began to emerge in certain tactical systems, marking a divergence from conventional formations. The profound influence of Italian catenaccio defense, while perhaps evolving in its application, still provided a foundational understanding of defensive principles for many coaches worldwide. The emphasis on clean sheets became a significant metric for evaluating defensive performance and, by extension, managerial success, placing immense pressure on backlines. The role of the goalkeeper in organizing the defense became more pronounced, with increased communication and leadership responsibilities demanded of the shot stopper. The commercial value of football continued its upward trajectory, leading to greater scrutiny on transfer outcomes and individual player performances, particularly for expensive acquisitions. The narrative of underdogs triumphing over giants was a frequent and celebrated theme in knockout competitions during the 2000s, delivering emotional highs. This era also saw the emergence of new statistical analysis techniques, though not as widespread or sophisticated as today, influencing tactical discussions and player assessments. The concept of football intelligence was highly valued, referring to a player's innate ability to read the game and make smart decisions without explicit instructions from the touchline. The importance of set pieces, both offensively and defensively, was a critical aspect of tactical planning in the 2000s, with specialist coaches often employed. The globalization of player recruitment meant that teams sought defensive talent from a wider array of nations and leagues, enriching squad diversity. The perceived lack of glamour in defensive roles often meant that attacking players received more media attention and adulation, despite the undeniable importance of defenders to team success. The cultural perception of football as a beautiful game was often tied directly to moments of individual skill and dramatic turns of events, making every match a potential classic. The 2000s were a period of significant tactical experimentation, as managers constantly sought new ways to gain competitive advantages over their rivals. The development of dedicated defensive coaches within club staff became more common, indicating a growing specialization in tactical roles and training. The physical and mental resilience required for top-level defensive play in the 2000s was immense, often leading to iconic player reputations forged in countless battles. The strategic use of substitutions to alter defensive shapes or introduce fresh defensive players was a key managerial decision-making aspect, especially in tight encounters. The 2000s were a period where the individual battles between star attackers and elite defenders were often central to match narratives, providing compelling drama. The increasing financial stakes in football heightened the pressure on defenders to prevent goals, as every goal conceded could have significant implications for league standings and prize money. The emotional rollercoaster of following football matches, with unpredictable twists and turns, was a hallmark of the entertainment value this era consistently delivered. The 2000s also saw a debate regarding the ethics of diving and simulation, influencing player conduct and refereeing decisions, sparking passionate discussions. The development of advanced scouting networks provided managers with more detailed information on opponent tactics and player tendencies, leading to more informed game plans. The influence of national team coaches on tactical trends also permeated club football, with successful international strategies often replicated and adapted. The era produced many memorable comebacks and last-minute victories, contributing immensely to the pervasive sense of unpredictability and drama that defined the decade. The tactical use of the sweeper-keeper role became more pronounced, requiring goalkeepers to actively participate in defensive distribution and act as an extra outfield player. The 2000s were a period of significant innovation in defensive training methods, focusing intensively on anticipation, positioning, and tackling technique. The concept of total football, though originating earlier, saw a resurgence in influence in certain teams during the 2000s, emphasizing fluid positions and interchangeability across the pitch. The new millennium, the 2000s, opened a period exceptionally rich in footballing talent, gifting us some of the greatest players the world has ever seen. This decade also showcased some of the finest club sides in football history, etching their names into the sport's lore. AC Milan underwent a remarkable renaissance, achieving significant success with a blend of tactical brilliance and individual flair. Real Madrid, in contrast, pursued a different path, assembling their famed Galacticos squad, characterized by a collection of global superstars designed to dominate both on and off the pitch. Arsenal achieved an unprecedented, invincible season, navigating an entire Premier League campaign without suffering a single defeat, a testament to their manager Arsene Wenger's vision and the team's unwavering consistency. Chelsea, under its new ownership, established an immortal period of dominance, rapidly transforming into a major European force. Meanwhile, Manchester United, already a prime force, nurtured the early career and dazzling flair of a young Cristiano Ronaldo, laying the groundwork for his legendary status. The authentic anticipation and sheer excitement for football events were palpably heightened during the 2000s as the world felt smaller. The nascent internet and the growing reach of satellite television significantly contributed to a rise in global anticipation for major footballing spectacles, connecting fans like never before. David Beckham's monumental transfer to Real Madrid exemplified the global news impact of certain player moves, transcending local interest and elevating him to unprecedented global stardom seemingly overnight. This era also marked the beginning of significant financial investments being injected into football clubs, forever changing the economic landscape. Roman Abramovich's acquisition of Chelsea Football Club in 2003 profoundly altered this financial paradigm, initiating a trend of big spenders in the football world and pushing transfer fees to new heights. Culturally, football fever surrounding major tournaments reached new heights with this increased media coverage, making global events feel truly collective experiences. The economic impact of high-profile transfers, such as Beckham's move to Real Madrid, had ripple effects across merchandising, media rights, and brand partnerships, creating a new commercial ecosystem for the sport. The increasing media scrutiny on star players, amplified by early internet penetration, created constant public narratives around their performances, their lives, and their perceived roles within the game. The rising commercialization of football, while certainly present, had not yet reached the same pervasive level as the post-2010 era, allowing for a perceived purer form of the game where football often felt less like a global business and more like a local passion. Player endorsement deals and commercial sponsorships became increasingly sophisticated, expertly leveraging the global star power that these athletes commanded. The emotional connection of players to their home stadiums and local fans was often a more defining characteristic of their careers than today, before widespread global fan bases diluted some of that local intensity. The growing influence of agents in player transfers and contract negotiations also became more apparent during this decade, significantly changing the dynamics of player mobility and club recruitment. This period also represented a significant transition in sports broadcasting, moving from traditional terrestrial television to satellite and early digital platforms, which vastly enhanced football's global reach and accessibility. Serie A, the Italian top-flight league, experienced a magnificent period of dominance during the 2000s, widely considered a golden era specifically for Italian football. Italian clubs consistently showcased some of the highest quality football in Europe, during this decade, a blend of tactical astuteness and individual brilliance. The rise of iconic Italian clubs such as AC Milan, Inter Milan, and Juventus contributed immensely to Serie A's commanding presence on the continental stage, creating fierce rivalries that captivated audiences. These intense rivalries between top Serie A clubs, Milan, Inter, Juventus, created a captivating league narrative that drew in fans with every derby. The strength of the league was not confined to just a few teams. Almost all sides in Serie A possessed brilliant players, making nearly every match a competitive spectacle. However, Juventus faced a significant scandal in the 2000s, resulting in their relegation and the stripping of titles. This scandal, known as Calciopoli, involved allegations of match fixing and influencing referee appointments in 2006, shaking the foundations of Italian football. The severe consequences of Calciopoli included Juventus being relegated to Serie B and stripped of their 2005 and 2006 Serie A titles, a dramatic fall from grace. Other clubs involved, such as AC Milan, Fiorentina, Lazio, and Regina, also received penalties, though less severe, highlighting a systemic issue. Yet, despite the scandal, the underlying talent pool and competitive spirit within Italian football allowed for a swift recovery, demonstrating its deep roots and enduring passion. Juventus, remarkably, managed to retain many of their key players even in Serie B and quickly returned to Serie A dominance, showcasing their enduring strength and resilience. The success of Italian teams in European competitions, including multiple Champions League victories, consistently underscored Serie A's fundamental strength, even amidst turmoil. AC Milan's tactical mastery under the astute Carlo Ancelotti saw them win the Champions League in 2003 and again in 2007, solidifying their status as European giants. Inter Milan, after years spent in Juventus's shadow, began to build a formidable team towards the end of the decade, a project that would culminate in even greater success shortly after. The league's vibrancy was evident in its star players. Fiorentina's Gabriel Batistuta, a powerful and iconic striker, scored 20 goals in 34 Serie A appearances during the 2000 to 2001 season. Batistuta was a key player in the early 2000s before moving to Roma, where he finally won a league title, a fitting reward for his prolific career. Antonio Di Natale played for Udinese from 2004 to 2009, scoring 74 goals in 150 appearances, becoming not only Udinese's top goalscorer but also topping the league's goal-scoring charts at one point, defying expectations. Diego Milito, an Argentinian striker, started his Italian career at Genoa before his renowned and highly successful run with Inter Milan later in the decade. Enrico Chiesa, father of future Juventus winger Federico Chiesa, was also a notable and dynamic player during this memorable era. Other prominent players who illuminated the 2000s in Italy included the elegant Alessandro Del Piero, the beloved Francesco Totti, and the imperious defender Alessandro Nesta, all epitomizing the highly valued club legends who combined loyalty with immense skill. The 2000s were also a period where the individual skill of players often overshadowed rigid tactical systems, leading to more spontaneous and thrilling moments on the pitch. The visual spectacle of the game, including vibrant kits and dynamic play, profoundly contributed to its entertainment value, drawing in millions of new fans. The emphasis on attacking football often meant that defensive solidity was sometimes compromised in favor of goal-scoring opportunities, leading to many high-scoring and memorable encounters. The decade is fondly remembered for producing many iconic individual goals that combine skill, power, and audacity, often becoming viral moments long before social media truly existed. The concept of total football, though originating earlier, saw a resurgence in influence in certain teams during the 2000s, emphasizing fluid positions and interchangeability among players. The diversity of playing styles across different leagues was more pronounced in the 2000s, with distinct characteristics for Serie A's tactical depth, La Liga's technical finesse, and the Premier League's intensity, creating varied spectacles. The emphasis on direct attacking play and swift counterattacks was a common tactical approach in many successful teams of the 2000s, prioritizing speed and decisive action. The role of the target man striker, relying on physical presence and aerial ability, was still a significant feature of offensive strategies, providing a focal point for attacks. The development of specialist roles within teams was less pronounced compared to modern football, with many players expected to perform multiple functions and adapt to various game situations. Tactical flexibility, where players could operate in multiple positions, was highly valued, contributing to a more one-size-fits-all observation of player attributes rather than hyper-specialization. The use of false nines and highly fluid attacking systems was less common, with traditional striker roles being more prevalent and clearly defined. The development of specific training programs for different player positions became more formalized during this period, recognizing the distinct physical and technical demands of each role. The 2000s represented a period where individual skill and flair were often sufficient to overcome minor tactical deficiencies, relying on moments of genius to unlock defenses. The relative stability of managerial tenures at top clubs was somewhat higher, allowing for longer-term team building and the consistent application of philosophical approaches. The aesthetic of certain stadiums, many of which were older and had more character, contributed significantly to the overall matchday experience, imbuing it with a sense of history. The concept of squad rotation became more sophisticated, with managers balancing the demands of domestic and European commitments to keep their players fresh and avoid burnout. Behind the scenes, the transformation of Chelsea under Abramovich involved massive investment, not only in players, but also in state-of-the-art facilities and top-tier coaching staff, creating a modern footballing institution. Manchester United's sustained success in the 2000s was also fueled by the tactical genius of Sir Alex Ferguson, whose ability to rebuild teams and maintain high standards was unparalleled. The competitive nature of the UEFA Champions League intensified in the 2000s, showcasing the very best club sides against each other in a truly global arena. The golden goal and silver goal rules were briefly implemented in international tournaments during the early 2000s, adding to dramatic finishes, though they were later abandoned. The 2000s also saw a shift in scouting towards a more global approach, identifying talent from non-traditional footballing nations and expanding the talent pool. The development of football academies became a central part of club strategies to nurture future talent and maintain competitive edges, laying the foundation for future success. The 2000s saw the rise of modern sports academies, which started to standardize youth development methods, profoundly influencing future generations of players. The introduction of the UEFA Champions League format in the early 1990s continued to elevate the prestige and financial stakes of European club football throughout the 2000s, making it the pinnacle of club competition. The lack of extensive video analysis for opponents meant teams relied more on traditional scouting reports and intuitive in-game adjustments, demanding greater adaptability from managers and players. The impact of injuries was often managed with less sophisticated sports medicine techniques compared to contemporary practices, influencing player longevity and recovery times. The competitive balance within leagues, especially outside the top few teams, was often perceived as stronger in the 2000s, leading to fewer one-sided contests. The 2000s also saw increased efforts in anti-doping regulations, reflecting a broader shift towards fair play and athlete welfare across the sport. The role of the goalkeeper continued to evolve, with an increasing emphasis on distribution skills in addition to traditional shot stopping, making them a more integral part of build-up play. The perception of football as entertainment was deeply ingrained in the 2000s, with a clear focus on dramatic matches and individual heroics that captured the imagination. The cultural significance of local derbies and rivalries was often amplified by the strong local identities of clubs and fan bases, creating an intense atmosphere unique to each region. The popularity of football video games, such as FIFA and Pro Evolution Soccer, contributed significantly to the global recognition of players and teams from the 2000s, introducing them to a new generation of fans. The emotional investment of fans in their clubs was often described as more intense due to fewer avenues for direct communication with players outside of match days, fostering a deeper, almost mystical connection. The iconic celebrations of players, often spontaneous and less choreographed than today, were a characteristic feature of goals scored in the 2000s, reflecting raw emotion. The 2000s are remembered as a golden era for football, marked by truly exceptional talent, unforgettable matches, and significant changes that left a lasting impact on the sport. The 2000s football era is often considered a time when the game truly looked and felt like its most authentic form, a period cherished by many fans. It allowed for a one-size-fits-all approach to player roles, where individuals could adapt to the game on their own terms, less constrained by restrictive tactics or the tight-fitting kits that would later become standard. This decade blessed football with both exceptional talents and legendary teams, leaving an indelible mark that shaped the sport for decades to come. The foundational elements established during those years continue to influence modern football strategies and player development. Though originating earlier, the concept of total football saw a resurgence, influencing certain teams with its emphasis on fluid positions and interchangeable roles. Despite increasing commercialization, it had not reached the same levels seen post-2010, preserving a perceived purer form of the game where the emotional connection of players to their home stadiums and local fans often defined careers. This period also saw the rise of modern sports academies, beginning to standardize youth development and influencing future generations of talent. The UEFA Champions League, with its format established in the early 1990s, continued to elevate European club football's prestige and financial stakes throughout the 2000s, becoming the pinnacle of club competition. A notable diversity of playing styles across different leagues was more pronounced, with Serie A, La Liga, and the Premier League each exhibiting distinct characteristics. Many successful teams of the era favored direct attacking play and rapid counterattacks as common tactical approaches, captivating audiences with thrilling end-to-end action. The target man striker, relying on physical presence and aerial ability, remained a significant feature of offensive strategies, providing a focal point for attacks. Teams in the 2000s often relied more on detailed scouting reports and in-game adjustments due to a comparative lack of extensive video analysis for opponents. The perception of football as entertainment was deeply ingrained, focusing on dramatic matches and individual heroics that transcended mere results. The decade was marked by significant rule changes, such as the introduction of the golden goal and silver goal rules in international tournaments, though these were later abandoned after proving controversial. The growing influence of agents in player transfers and contract negotiations became more apparent, fundamentally changing player mobility and career trajectories. Squad rotation became a more sophisticated art, with managers meticulously balancing domestic and demanding European commitments to keep their teams fresh and competitive. The tactical flexibility of players able to operate in multiple positions was highly valued, contributing to that one-size-fits-all observation we spoke of. The impact of injuries was often managed with less sophisticated sports medicine techniques compared to contemporary practices, frequently influencing player longevity and recovery times. The 2000s marked a period of transition in sports broadcasting, moving from traditional terrestrial television to satellite and early digital platforms, significantly enhancing football's global reach. Iconic player celebrations, often spontaneous and less choreographed, were a characteristic feature of goals scored, adding raw emotion to every strike. A relative stability of managerial tenures at top clubs was somewhat higher than today, fostering longer-term team building and consistent philosophies. The aesthetic of certain stadiums, many older with rich character, contributed significantly to the overall matchday experience, creating an atmosphere that felt truly unique. The use of false nines and highly fluid attacking systems was less common, with traditional striker roles being more prevalent and clearly defined. The development of specific training programs tailored for different player positions became more formalized, recognizing the specialized skills required. The 2000s represented a period where individual skill and flair were often sufficient to overcome tactical deficiencies, making for breathtaking moments of solo brilliance. The competitive balance within leagues, especially outside the very top few teams, was often perceived as stronger, leading to more unpredictable outcomes. The cultural significance of local derbies and rivalries was frequently amplified by the strong local identities of clubs and their fan bases, making these matches feel like community events. This decade also saw increased efforts in anti-doping regulations, reflecting a broader shift towards fair play and athlete welfare across the sport. The role of the goalkeeper continued to evolve, with an increasing emphasis on distribution skills in addition to traditional shot stopping, foreshadowing the modern sweeper-keeper. The burgeoning popularity of football video games, such as FIFA and Pro Evolution Soccer, contributed immensely to the global recognition of players and teams from the 2000s, creating a new generation of fans. The emotional investment of fans in their clubs was often described as more intense, largely due to fewer avenues for direct communication with players outside of match days, making every interaction feel more precious. The visual spectacle of the game, including vibrant kits and dynamic play, consistently contributed to its immense entertainment value. The emphasis on attacking football often meant that defensive solidity was sometimes compromised in favor of goal-scoring opportunities, leading to more open, thrilling encounters. The 2000s are remembered for producing many iconic individual goals that combined skill, power, and audacity, leaving an enduring legacy of breathtaking moments. It was an era where football felt raw, passionate, and deeply personal, a final hurrah before the game changed irrevocably. We started this journey wondering what made this particular decade so special, so distinct. We found a time when the game felt closer, more human, a sweet spot between tradition and the dawn of modernity. It was a time that truly understood the heartbeat of football. What are your own strongest memories of football from the 2000s? I would love to read your thoughts in the comments. Those strong memories, I believe, stem from a unique confluence of factors that cemented the 2000s as a truly special era. It was a decade where the foundational elements of modern football were taking shape, yet without the overwhelming commercialization and tactical rigidity that would define later years. This allowed the game to breathe, to feel genuinely authentic. The one-size-fits-all approach to players, a concept we touched upon, meant that players possessed an incredible tactical flexibility. It wasn't uncommon to see a midfielder capable of playing multiple roles across the pitch, or a forward dropping deep to link play and then leading the line. This versatility was highly valued and contributed to the dynamic, often unpredictable nature of matches. Players weren't constrained by hyper-specific roles or the kind of restrictive tactical systems that would later dominate. Instead, their natural talent and ability to adapt to game situations on their own terms were paramount. Modern, tight-fitting kits, designed for aerodynamic efficiency and GPS tracking, were still a distant thought. Instead, kits often felt looser, allowing for a freedom of movement that perhaps subconsciously encouraged more individual expression. This focus on individual skill and flair was often sufficient to overcome tactical deficiencies, leading to breathtaking moments of individual brilliance that could single-handedly decide games. The era truly blessed football with an abundance of exceptional talents, players who would become legends for their dazzling footwork, audacious goals, and sheer force of will. Think of Zidane's elegance, Ronaldinho's joy, Henry's clinical precision, or Maldini's defensive mastery. These individuals, alongside legendary teams like Arsenal's Invincibles, Mourinho's first Chelsea, Real Madrid's Galacticos, or Milan's tactical titans, left an indelible mark on the sport, shaping its future trajectory and inspiring a generation. While tactical evolution was certainly ongoing, the influence of total football, though originating earlier, saw a resurgence in certain teams during the 2000s, emphasizing fluid positions and interchangeability. However, this often coexisted with more direct attacking play and counterattacks, which remained common tactical approaches for many successful teams. The role of the target man striker, relying on physical presence and aerial ability to hold up the ball and bring others into play, was still a significant feature of offensive strategies, providing a tangible focal point for attacks. Defensive formations like the classic 4-4-2 were prevalent, often providing a robust platform for these direct attacking styles and setting the stage for more individual battles across the pitch. One significant difference from today was the relative lack of extensive video analysis for opponents. Managers and players relied much more heavily on scouting reports, word of mouth, and crucially, in-game adjustments based on real-time observations. This fostered a different kind of tactical intelligence, one where improvisation and quick thinking were highly prized. The concept of false nines or highly fluid attacking systems, so common today, was still less prevalent, with traditional striker roles being more common and clearly defined. Similarly, the development of specialist roles within teams was less pronounced. Many players were expected to perform multiple functions rather than being confined to a very narrow, specific remit. The increasing commercialization of football was undoubtedly present throughout the 2000s, with big money deals, global sponsorships, and the rise of personal endorsements. However, it had not yet reached the stratospheric levels of the post-2010 era. This allowed for a perceived purer form of the game, where the financial stakes, while high, didn't overshadow the love of the sport and the fierce rivalries. The emotional connection of players to their home stadiums and local fans was a far more defining characteristic of their careers. Many players spent significant portions of their careers at one club, fostering deep bonds with the supporters and the local community. This made the cultural significance of local derbies and rivalries even more amplified, fueled by strong local identities of clubs and fan bases. The cultural significance of specific match rivalries often carried more weight in local communities due to less globalized fan bases. The introduction of the UEFA Champions League format in the early 1990s continued to elevate the prestige and financial stakes of European club football throughout the 2000s. Its knockout stages delivered unparalleled drama and showcased the very best of European talent, becoming the ultimate stage for club glory. This period also saw the rise of modern sports academies, which began to standardize youth development methods, significantly influencing future generations of players. These academies became crucibles for talent, focusing on technical skill and tactical understanding from a young age, though perhaps not to the same hyper-specialized degree as today. The 2000s were also a fascinating period of transition in sports broadcasting. While traditional terrestrial TV still held sway, the decade saw a significant shift towards satellite and early digital platforms. This dramatically enhanced the global reach of football, bringing matches from various leagues into homes worldwide and expanding the fan base exponentially. The diversity of playing styles across different leagues was far more pronounced during this time, with distinct characteristics for Serie A's tactical solidity, La Liga's technical flair, the Premier League's intensity, and the Bundesliga's efficiency. This made for a richer, more varied viewing experience, as each league offered a unique flavor of the beautiful game. The perception of football as entertainment was deeply ingrained, with a strong focus on dramatic matches, individual heroics, and breathtaking moments. Iconic celebrations of players, often spontaneous and less choreographed than today, were a characteristic feature of goals scored, adding to the spectacle. The aesthetic of certain stadiums, many of which were older and had more character before the widespread construction of modern, often sterile, arenas, contributed immensely to the overall matchday experience, evoking a sense of history and tradition. Managerial tenures at top clubs were generally somewhat higher in the 2000s, allowing for longer-term team building and the implementation of consistent philosophies. This stability fostered stronger team cohesion and allowed managers to truly shape their squads over several seasons. The concept of squad rotation also became more sophisticated during this period, with managers expertly balancing domestic and European commitments to keep their key players fresh and minimize injury risks. However, the impact of injuries was often managed with less sophisticated sports medicine techniques compared to contemporary practices, influencing player longevity and sometimes prematurely ending careers or reducing player effectiveness. Rule changes also played a part in shaping the era. The 2000s were marked by several significant, if ultimately temporary, rule changes, such as the introduction of the golden goal and silver goal rules in international tournaments, designed to encourage attacking play and avoid penalty shootouts, though they were later abandoned. The growing influence of agents in player transfers and contract negotiations became more apparent during this decade, changing player mobility and the financial landscape of the sport. While beneficial for players in many respects, it also began to shift the power dynamics within the game. The competitive balance within leagues, especially outside the very top few teams, was often perceived as stronger in the 2000s. There was a sense that more teams had a genuine chance to challenge for honors, leading to a more open and exciting championship race. The emotional investment of fans in their clubs was often described as more intense, perhaps due to fewer avenues for direct communication with players outside of match days, amplifying the connection felt through the collective experience of match attendance. Even the role of the goalkeeper continued to evolve during this time, with an increasing emphasis on distribution skills in addition to traditional shot stopping. Goalkeepers were no longer just static protectors of the net, but integral parts of building attacks from the back. And let's not forget the cultural impact of football video games like FIFA and Pro Evolution Soccer. These games contributed massively to the global recognition of players and teams from the 2000s, turning household names into virtual legends and deepening fans' engagement with the sport. Finally, the 2000s saw increased efforts in anti-doping regulations, reflecting a broader shift towards fair play and athlete welfare, striving to maintain the integrity of the competition. But through all these changes and developments, the core emphasis on attacking football, often meaning that defensive solidity was sometimes compromised in favor of goal-scoring opportunities, created a spectacle. This era is remembered for producing many iconic individual goals that combine skill, power, and audacity, moments frozen in time that encapsulate the very essence of the beautiful game at its most thrilling. This decade, then, wasn't just a period in time, it was a profound chapter in football's history. It laid much of the groundwork for the modern game, while retaining a charming rawness and passion that many feel has been somewhat diminished. It was a sweet spot indeed, where tradition met modernity, and the heartbeat of football felt stronger than ever. Perhaps that's why, for so many of us, the memories from the 2000s remain so vividly etched in our minds.